Mark, your takeaway from the conferences, two names that really stood out to you. What would you tell investors?
Uber and Spotify. First, Sarah, it was just nice to be back in New York in one of these conferences again, seeing real investors in real person. But the companies, it was almost 40 companies we actually hosted. I thought Uber and Spotify were particularly interesting. Uber, we had their head of their ride-sharing business. And I think there's something really interesting being rolled out now called upfront pricing, where drivers, and it's a supply challenge business right now, where drivers are given upfront pricing and they're told where the fares, how much the fares are and where the rides are going to. I think that will increase driver satisfaction. You got to get more drivers. I think this can really move the needle for them. And then Spotify, I think, is an inflection point story. I know that I said that a year ago, Sarah, and it didn't happen. But I think it can still happen.
You knew I was going to remind you, too.
Yes, I knew you would. But going into 23, I think you get gross margin expansion for the first time ever for this name, for a variety of different reasons. But I think they're finally reaching scale. I think they're starting to get a lot of advertising revenue from artists and labels. That really helps. And then they're finally moving off the heavy investment phase that they've been putting into podcasting. All of that comes together, I think, starting next year with gross margin expansion. And then they've had this user acceleration this year. I think that can convert into paid sub acceleration next year, or strong growth next year. I think you want to be long Spotify before that happens, and that's now.
So I could go a lot of places, but I guess the thread there in terms of the pushback on both of them would be a recessionary environment, right? With mobility, with Uber, and with the ad spending with Spotify, especially if a large part of your thesis on Spotify is that it's going to be almost a quarter of revenues.
Yeah, the pushback's right, and the good or the bad. On the good for Spotify is, unlike all those video streaming services, people only sign up for one music streaming service, and so you're probably, even in a tough recession, you may cut your video streaming package from 4 to 3 to 2 video streaming companies, but you're probably going to keep that music streaming package at, $10 a month. So that part of the business is probably reasonably recession resilient, knock on wood, reasonably recession resilient. The ads business, though, it's still only about 15% of total revenue. That won't be recessionary resilient, but it's smaller. So that's kind of your hedge there. And on Uber, so far, we haven't seen any signs. People still got to be mobile. They still got to get to work, got to get to the airport, et cetera. And, in many ways, in some markets in New York, Uber is expensive. But in a lot of other markets, it's very comparable to taxis and generally considered safer and more convenient for a variety of different reasons. And so I think that part of the business can hold up. The issue is going to be the delivery business. That's what I'm most concerned about for Uber next year.